My name is Isabel, and this is the story of how my own parents cut me out of their will, how I was forced to watch everything I thought would be mine handed to my brothers, and how, in the end, I built an empire worth $900 million without them. From the outside, my family looked like everything people dream of being born into. My parents owned a thriving real estate company. They were admired in our community, known for their business acumen, their philanthropy, their picture-perfect life. My brothers, Andrew and Matthew, were groomed to inherit everything from the start. And me, I was the daughter who was supposed to smile, be agreeable, and accept my smaller role. As a child, I noticed it early. Andrew got the best tutors, the best opportunities, the best schools. Matthew was treated like the baby of the family, spoiled and indulged. When I worked hard in school and brought home high grades, my parents would say, "That's good, Isabel, but your brothers need the spotlight. They'll be running the company one day." I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. I wasn't jealous, I told myself, just determined. If I couldn't earn their love with achievements, I'd earn it by proving I could contribute. I studied business on my own, reading books from my father's office late at night, scribbling down notes about strategy, investments, and entrepreneurship. No one noticed. No one cared. By the time I graduated college, I was filled with both ambition and dread. Ambition, because I knew I had the skills to stand on my own. Dread, because I also knew my parents had no intention of giving me that chance. The truth came out the day they read their will. We gathered in my father's grand office, the smell of leather and polished wood suffocating me as the lawyer unfolded the papers. My parents sat at the head of the table, my brothers on either side, smug and expectant. I sat quietly, heart pounding, telling myself not to hope too much. The lawyer began reading. Andrew would inherit half the real estate company. Matthew would inherit the other half. The assets, the properties, the accounts, all divided between them. And then my name. My heart leaped, waiting for my piece. To our daughter, Isabel, the lawyer read flatly. We leave a trust fund of $50,000. Silence. $50,000. My parents, millionaires many times over, owners of a vast company, left me what amounted to scraps compared to my brothers. Scraps. To keep me quiet, to keep me dependent, to keep me in my place. I stared at them, my throat tight, my chest burning. "That's it," I whispered. "After everything I've done, after everything I've given to this family." My father's eyes were cold. "You'll be fine, Isabel. 50,000 is more than enough for you. The business belongs to your brothers. That's how it's always been." Matthew smirked. Andrew looked almost smugly apologetic, as if he wanted to say, "Sorry, but you were never really in the running." I pushed back my chair, my hands trembling. I worked harder than both of them. I studied, I planned. "You're a woman," my father cut in sharply. "You don't understand how this works. Leave the big responsibilities to your brothers." The words hit me like a slap. My mother stayed silent, eyes lowered, as if she couldn't bear to look at me. I walked out of that office, humiliated, betrayed, and heartbroken. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had reduced my worth to $50,000. My brothers had inherited millions. I had inherited an insult. But as I drove away from that house, tears blurring my vision, something inside me hardened. They thought they had written me out. They thought I would disappear quietly, resigned to a life of dependence. But they didn't know me. They didn't know that betrayal can become fuel. And, that day, I promised myself, one day, I'd build something so big, so undeniable, that they would choke on their regret. After the will reading, I drove aimlessly for hours. The city lights blurred past my windshield, but all I could hear were my father's words echoing in my head. "You're a woman. You don't understand how this works." It wasn't just the insult. It was the certainty in his voice, the way he said it as if it were a fact carved in stone. My life, my potential, dismissed in a single sentence. And the $50,000 gift felt less like support and more like a gag, hush money to keep me quiet while my brothers basked in their inheritance. I cried that night until my body ached. I thought of every late night I had spent studying, every moment I had tried to prove myself, every sacrifice I had made to be the daughter they could be proud of. And for what? To be cast aside, erased from the legacy I had believed I was part of. For days, I spiraled. I didn't answer calls. I ignored texts. Ethan, my boyfriend at the time, came knocking on my door, but I couldn't face him. What would I even say? That my own parents had chosen my brothers and thrown me crumbs. That they thought I was worth less than a rounding error in their bank account. When I finally let Ethan in, he sat with me quietly. I expected pity. I expected him to say, "I'm sorry," Instead, he said something I'll never forget. "Isabel, stop crying over what they gave your brothers. Start thinking about what you're going to give yourself." I stared at him through swollen eyes. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward. "They don't believe in you. Fine, but do you believe in you? Because if you do, you don't need their scraps. You can build something bigger, something they can't ignore." His words ignited something in me. For so long, I had been waiting for approval, waiting for permission, waiting for my parents to hand me a seat at the table. But what if I built my own table? That night, I pulled out a notebook. I started writing ideas, business concepts, industries I was passionate about, problems I wanted to solve. I scribbled until my hand cramped, page after page filled with possibilities. For the first time, the humiliation began to turn into determination. But determination doesn't erase reality. I had no capital, no connections outside of my family, and no idea where to start. All I had was $50,000 and a fire in my chest, so I started small. Used part of the money to enroll in an advanced entrepreneurship program. Surrounded by ambitious strangers, I realized I wasn't crazy for wanting more. I wasn't wrong for dreaming bigger. And unlike my family, these people didn't dismiss me. They challenged me. They sharpened me. My first venture was a disaster. I tried launching an online boutique, but I underestimated shipping costs, overestimated demand, and ran out of funds within 6 months. My dad heard about it. Of course, word travels fast in families like mine. At the next family gathering, he smirked across the table and said, "How's your little shop going, Isabel?" My brothers laughed. My mother looked away. I forced a smile, but inside, I was burning. Yes, I had failed, but unlike them, I had tried. I picked myself back up. I took a job in marketing to pay my bills while I studied every successful business I could find. I devoured biographies, case studies, and podcasts. I shadowed entrepreneurs, asked questions, learned from their scars, and slowly, patterns began to emerge. I realized the world was changing. Technology was reshaping industries, and real estate, my family's empire, was slow to adapt. They were clinging to old methods, while a new generation of consumers wanted something different. Speed, convenience, innovation. That was the crack in the armor I had been searching for. I didn't need their company. I didn't need their approval. I just needed to find the one idea that would let me carve my own path. And when I found it, I knew I was going to build a digital platform that combined real estate with technology, a marketplace that would make buying, selling, and renting as seamless as ordering something online. No middlemen, no hidden fees, just transparency and speed. At first, people laughed. "That's too ambitious. No one will trust a platform like that. You don't have the experience." But I had something they didn't. The hunger of someone who had been told she was worth nothing. I scraped together seed money by freelancing, saving every penny, and convincing a few brave investors to take a chance on me. The early days were brutal: coding glitches, skeptical clients, endless rejections. I worked 16-hour days, fueled by coffee and sheer defiance. There were nights I wanted to quit, nights when the weight of my family's betrayal pressed down on me like a stone. But every time I thought about giving up, I pictured my father's face the day he told me I didn't understand how this works, and I whispered to myself, "Watch me." The first version of my platform was rough, almost embarrassing. The interface looked outdated, the search tools glitched constantly, and the customer support was basically just me with a second-hand laptop and a prepaid phone. But it was alive. It was mine. I remember the first time someone actually used it to rent an apartment. I stared at the notification on my screen, my heart racing. It wasn't just money, it was validation. Proof that my idea wasn't crazy. Proof that someone, somewhere, trusted me enough to click yes. But those small wins didn't silence the doubts. Every investor meeting felt like a firing squad. They'd look at me across glossy conference tables and say things like, "You're too young. Real estate is too competitive. Come back when you've proven yourself." I wanted to scream. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Still, I pushed forward. Ethan was by my side, reminding me why I started. "They left you out, Isabel. You're not just building a business, you're building your freedom." And he was right. Every setback stung, but it also made me hungrier. The first big break came almost by accident. A journalist from a local business magazine stumbled across my platform while searching for rental listings. He reached out, curious about the woman behind it. When his article went live, it wasn't a front-page feature, it was a small column tucked inside, but it changed everything. Traffic doubled overnight. Suddenly, people were curious. Suddenly, investors who had brushed me off wanted to hear more. Suddenly, the idea that once sounded impossible was beginning to sound inevitable. That was the moment I felt the shift. But with growth came risk. Competitors noticed me. Lawsuits threatened. I was still operating out of a cramped studio apartment, and suddenly I was up against billion-dollar firms. There were nights I cried in Ethan's arms, terrified I'd lose everything before it really began. And yet, every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that will. I remembered the $50,000, the dismissive smirk on my father's face, the silence of my mother, the laughter of my brothers, and I told myself, if they could underestimate me that badly, imagine what the world is underestimating too. So I scaled. I hired a small team of people who believed in the mission as much as I did. We worked late into the nights, fueled by ramen noodles and stubborn faith. Slowly, the glitches got fixed. The design got sleeker, and the platform became something I could be proud of. Then came the day I pitched to a major investor group. I walked into the room with shaking hands but fire in my eyes. I told them my story, not just about the business, but about being written off, about being underestimated, about why I believed this platform could change the industry. When I finished, the room was silent. My stomach dropped. And then, one of the senior partners leaned forward and said, "We'll back you." I nearly collapsed with relief. That check didn't just fund the business, it validated everything I had fought for. Months later, the platform was growing faster than I ever dreamed. Real estate agents wanted in, property managers signed contracts, customers praised how easy it was to use. The numbers climbed higher and higher, and then came the sweetest twist of all. At a family gathering, my father's company came up in conversation. They were struggling, bleeding clients, losing relevance, clinging to outdated practices. And do you know where those clients were going? To me, to my platform. I watched my father's face tighten as a cousin mentioned how Isabel's site is everywhere these days. Andrew and Matthew stayed quiet, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. My mother looked at me for the first time in years with something like, or maybe fear. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because success speaks louder than any words ever could. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I wasn't done proving them wrong. I wasn't done building. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about rewriting the story they had written for me. It was about showing them and the world that I wasn't the daughter who got scraps. I was the woman who would build an empire. Success doesn't happen overnight, but sometimes it feels like the world suddenly wakes up and notices you all at once. That's what it felt like the year my platform went from a promising startup to an unstoppable force. Partnerships poured in. Investors who had once dismissed me were now begging for a seat at the table. Our team expanded from a cramped studio apartment to a sleek office downtown, buzzing with energy. Every time I walked through those glass doors, hearing the hum of people building my vision, I felt a rush of pride that no inheritance could ever give me. And then came the phone call. It was a journalist from Forbes. They were doing a feature on tech innovators disrupting traditional industries, and they wanted to profile me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The same girl who had been handed $50,000 as an afterthought, the same daughter dismissed as irrelevant, was about to be recognized on a global stage. The article dropped, and the headline nearly made me cry. The woman redefining real estate, Isabel Stone's digital empire. My inbox exploded. Investors, partners, even strangers sending messages saying I had inspired them. And then, there it was, in bold print, my company's valuation, soaring past $900 million. I sat there staring at the number, my hands trembling. 900 million. My parents had left me scraps, but I had built an empire nearly worth $1 billion. Of course, the news didn't take long to reach my family. The next family dinner was different. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the daughter in the shadows. Whispers followed me into the room. Cousins asked questions about my company. Uncles congratulated me. Even people who had ignored me before wanted to be seen, shaking my hand. But the sweetest moment came when my father spoke. His voice was tight, forced, but the words still slipped out. "We're proud of you, Isabel." It should have felt like victory. It should have felt like the moment I had been waiting for all my life. But instead, it felt hollow. Because I realized he wasn't proud of me, he was proud of my success. He wanted to attach himself to my empire the way he had once attached me to his control. So I smiled politely and said, "Thank you, but I didn't do it for you." The silence around the table was sharp. My brothers shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale. For once, they weren't the golden sons. They were just men sitting across from the sister they had underestimated. Later that night, my father tried to pull me aside. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. Isabel, maybe we made mistakes. Maybe we didn't see your potential. But now you're in a position to. I stopped him there. No, Dad. You don't get to rewrite the story. You left me out. You chose them. And I chose myself. That's the only reason I'm standing here today. For the first time, he had no response. The man who always had the final word stood there speechless. And that was my real victory. Not the money, not the recognition, but the moment I looked my father in the eye and knew he couldn't take credit for a single ounce of my success. Because every late night, every failure, every scar, every triumph, it was all mine. People always ask me if I regret not getting a piece of my parents' fortune, if I wish things had turned out differently, if I wish they had seen me as equal to my brothers from the beginning. And the truth is, for a long time, I did. I used to lie awake at night, wondering why I wasn't enough for them, wondering what else I could have done to prove myself, wondering why my love, my loyalty, my effort didn't translate into value in their eyes. But not anymore, because if they had given me a slice of their empire, I might have settled for it. I might have spent my whole life clinging to scraps, trying to make the most of what they allowed me. Instead, they forced me to start from zero, and in doing that, they pushed me to discover something far greater than their inheritance. My own power. I built something they could never take away from me, something that wasn't theirs to hand out or withhold, something that belonged entirely to me, forged from sweat, sacrifice, and sheer stubborn will. $900 million. That number still shocks me sometimes. But more than the money, it's what it represents. Freedom. Independence. Proof that the daughter they dismissed, the one they thought wasn't worth more than $50,000, was capable of building an empire. Do I forgive them? I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe the point is that I don't need their validation anymore. I don't need their approval, their applause, or their excuses. Because when I look at my company, when I see the people whose lives have changed because of the opportunities we created, when I think about the barriers I broke through, I realize I gave myself the legacy they never would. And that is worth more than any will, any inheritance, any fortune they could have handed me. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever been made to feel small, invisible, or unworthy, let me tell you this. You are not defined by the people who underestimate you. You are not limited by the table they refuse to give you a seat at. Build your own table, build your own empire, and let your success speak louder than their doubt. My parents left me out of the will, but I built a $900 million empire on my own, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.